Welcome to the Burlingame Hillsborough Historical Museum, located inside the Burlingame train station. And if you're a docent, you're going to need a few little factoids, and I'm going to give them to you right now. When you arrive, somebody may have already opened the museum for you and unalarmed the alarm system. So we won't get into that. But however, when you first come in, you'll notice there's a little cheat sheet on the wall. Familiarize yourself with that. There are instructions on what to do when you open the museum and what to do when you close the museum. And there's some emergency contact numbers as well. You shouldn't have to worry about that kind of thing, but it's there for your perusal if you need it. Also, that's the keypad for the museum alarm system. You shouldn't have to need that either unless somebody has instructed you on how to use it. The restroom key is important. Some people will use the restroom and they will forget to unlock the door when they leave, and it'll lock behind them. So you can always unlock it with that key. You don't need to give visitors, a key. Not necessarily for that. It's just for you to unlock the door if you need to. Another housekeeping issue, you might find a tarp over this display and another display that I've already taken the tarp off of. And if they're still here when you get here, please take them off and put them along with your personal belongings in the room that is located behind that backdrop. That backdrop is just tacked in and you can move it and get inside that room and put your personal belongings and the covers that I just put on the floor there that doesn't belong on the floor, belongs in the back room when you take it off this particular display. And when you're leaving, you just put those covers back onto the displays. Another important housekeeping issue, this light switch here will turn on all the lights, including the neon lights and all the display lights, and that little open sign that's outside. I'm going to turn it on just for a moment, just so you can see what I'm talking about. The neon lights will go on, the display lights will go on, and the open sign will go on as well. So when you leave, all you got to do is remember to push the bottom button, and that will turn all the lights off. Okay, let's get into it. I won't get into the weeds, but I will point out a few little interesting points of some of the displays. There's our donation box at the end of the day. If you like, you can open it up. It just slides open like that, and the money comes out, and you can put the money in the back room, the same room that you had those personal belongings and the covers for the displays. Okay, let's move on. Again, I'm not going to get into the weeds. Perhaps you can visit, if you're a docent, you can visit before your chance to docent. Come into the museum and familiarize yourself with the display so you can hit the ground running. I'm not going to describe every little thing in every little display. There's some yearbooks that people are welcome to flip through. They're on little cords so they can't walk away with anything. One thing that I will caution you about is, as a docent, you should continue to walk around the museum. There'll always be 2 docents at a time, but as you can see, the sight lines here are not the best, so you want to make sure that everybody's enjoying their experience and make sure that nobody's hiding out. I don't think that will ever happen, but it's important for you to just walk around. You can certainly sit down and take a rest on the bench, but it's best practice for you to just continually walk around during your time docenting. In this corner, you have an entire display about Burlingame High School. The only thing I'll point out here is 2 things. That football is from the championship team of 1935, and it is signed by all the team members. And then you'll see this stick here with a little pointer on it. That is the Vic stick in honor of Vic Mangini, Dean of Students. And he would give this stick to those he thought were misbehaving so that they could go around and pick up trash on the campus. Obviously, that wouldn't happen today. Giving a kid a weapon would not be a good idea. Directly across from that is the display about civil defense, and Burlingame at War. I will point out just a couple of things. You'll see these helmets, they have insignias on them, and most people wouldn't know what those insignias mean. So you take a look at those insignias and then you can find a chart that explains what they mean. That's pretty interesting. And then also you have some war bonds from World War II, and next to it is a tribute to our fallen heroes here in Burlingame. So let's move on to the next display area. This display here is all about the police department, featuring a lot of different badges. And what I'll point out in this particular display is this logbook from the 1920s. That's when folks would be detained and they would be logged in this book. Mostly a lot of vagrancies and things like that. But if you look really closely, you'll see one for manslaughter. So you've got vagrancy, manslaughter. So again, there were crimes here in Burlingame, no doubt about it. And in fact, to prove it, we've got a whole display about crime in Burlingame, and also a little bit about the police department, and a little bit about one of I call it one of the original city halls here in Burlingame, located on Park Road. And you'll even see the cupola, which is located in the parking lot on Park Road to this day. Lots of interesting things in this display. Again, I won't go through every little thing. This is a little tribute to Public Works. We see a flood here in Burlingame, and we see one of the original pipes that was discovered even way back then in 1962. And then we even have the Burlingame Code. I think that book is from the 1930s, if I recall. So we're going to move on. Opposite that display is a wall, and that wall features what is known as lenticular graphics, and the way they work. As I move and as you move, as visitors move back and forth, they will see that these images change from the then to the now. And it's a really cool display, not using any high-tech interactive mechanisms, but low-tech lenticular graphics. As we move on, we have a photo opportunity. This photo opportunity is you can encourage visitors to go behind this little display, and you'll see an example of how it works right here. And it's a great photo opportunity for a selfie and for them to hashtag the Burlingame Historical Society. Next to that is a display about mansions in Hillsborough, featuring the Carolyn Mansion and a little display of a Pullman car, and you'll understand why that is if you read the display. There's a display about the history of the fire department. And then we move to it's kind of a narrow alleyway, and we have a couple of things that people can look up close and personal with, and these are photographs by a commercial photographer in the 1940s, the Depression era. George Manns was the name of the photographer, and we are lucky that he was around because he documented a lot of Burlingame that we wouldn't have today if he weren't around. There are some postcards that you can flip through at your leisure, and then opposite that is a wall of maps. People love maps. If they want to get a closer look, there are some magnifying glasses that they can use. This particular map is a map of the 7 creeks of Burlingame, and they are all indicated in green. Moving on, next to that, we have a display all about transportation in Burlingame. There's a couple of interesting things here. Not only does it talk about the number 40 light rail, which used to be here up until the early 1950s, but it also talks about what was called the Women's Safety Station, and you can see the story of that inside the display. And again, you can read all about transportation, everything from buses to taxis to light rails to trolleys. And then we move on to this display, which is all about leisure time in Burlingame. All kinds of leisure time activities. You can never call Burlingame boring game, because it wasn't. We feature some trick bikes from Ricky's Sport Shop. This bike in particular, if you ride it forwards, it will actually go backwards. And the reason for these trick bikes is that oftentimes the fire department would play the police department in a baseball game using these bikes, which was always good for a big belly laugh, of course. I will point out a couple of items in this display that I think are interesting. These tennis balls, these lawn darts, roller skates, etc. You could get all of those at Ricky's Sport Shop, but these tennis balls are white. You can no longer buy white tennis balls. These lawn darts were outlawed many years ago because the danger it posed to children, and you can read about those items right there. Pacific City was an amusement park that lasted only a few years here, and you can read about that in that display. Moving on, we also have a display about the Troop Number 10, Boy Scouts. That was one of the earliest Boy Scout troops in the country, and especially, I think it was the #1 first Boy Scout troop in the county. We do feature some stories about the town of Hillsborough and some of their schools. And of course, you can go through this display and get the fundamentals of how Burlingame and Hillsborough came to be. Moving on, we have a display about car culture in Burlingame. It features an actual El Camino bell. It also features this flip chart that we encourage people to go through to see all of the different car dealers that were here in Burlingame featured through their license plate frames. One interesting thing that I enjoy is this article about the automated traffic signals. This article talks about how Burlingame was one of the first to have an automated traffic signal, and you would pull your car up to that box, you'd honk your horn, and the traffic signal would change. It also, oddly enough, features an El Camino bell in one of those pictures. So, very interesting display about car culture here in Burlingame. Opposite that is all about real estate in Burlingame, including the Burlingame Railway, which went up Hillside Drive specifically to sell empty lots in the Easton Addition. I would encourage those who are visiting to look at this brochure. It's double-sided, it's laminated. You can pick it up and look at it and read it. That's also all about the lots in Easton Addition in the early days. Moving on, this is a display featuring, talking about movies in Burlingame. These are chairs from the original Peninsula Theater, and I think that's an interesting thing to point out to people, is that this Peninsula Theater, very opulent theater, used to be on Burlingame Avenue and is the Fox Plaza Mall now, and they can read all about other movie theaters in Burlingame, like the Drive-In, the Encore Theater, and others. There's even a display about Bing Crosby, one of our more famous residents. He lived technically not in Burlingame, but just over the border in Hillsborough. So lots to look at there about Bing Crosby. And then next to that is all about the general store. That general store was located on Burlingame Avenue as well. And lots of little artifacts that you could probably pick up at a store like that. And we come across these two little items, which I think are important because we're often asked questions about how did the station get painted the color that it is. Well, if you look at this artifact, you can really closely, you can see the original color peeking out through, and that indicates that the color today is an accurate color from when the station was built way back in 1894. This is also a common question, and the answer is right there. Why is there a V in Burlingame? And you can get the answers right there. Opposite that, you've got a display about businesses in Burlingame, the kinds of things they would do to promote their business. There's a really cool diorama of Preston's Ice Cream on Broadway, which is still there, and some other artifacts worth looking at. Speaking of the train station, there is a scale model of the train station that is very interesting to look at, along with the history of the station itself. Next to it, I do want to point out this. there are these little placards in and around the station called Did You Know? And they feature little factoids that perhaps people didn't know. And there are lots of those around. And I think if somebody were to visit the museum and they took nothing else away but some of the little factoids from these Did You Know placards, I think they would come away with a plethora of knowledge just based on those. So that's really the museum itself. I hope you have a fun time docenting. I wish you much luck. And if somebody has questions about anything Burlingame, like how can I buy a book? Well, you can buy it for $50 right here. Any questions at all, if you don't know the answers, just jot them down and jot down their contact information and we'll get back to them. So there you have it, the little museum here in Burlingame. Thank you so much for docenting. We couldn't do it without you. Well, of course, I forgot a couple of things that I need to mention. First thing is, as a docent, you should be wearing a badge, and the badges are located on the big S when you first walk in the door. Just grab one and put one around your neck. The other thing that I forgot to mention was that membership forms are located right behind the donation box, along with some business cards with my name and our archives number on it in case somebody has a question that they want to follow up with that you haven't already written down. So those are two resources that you need to be aware of. Thank you again. Another thing that I failed to mention, it's minor, but if anybody is doing their mugshot selfie here, they may move this sign inadvertently, and to put it back into place, you just look for that blue tape and put the corner of the base next to that blue tape, and it'll be perfectly aligned again. Easy peasy.